Okay, in the previous video, we looked at the phylum Pteridophyta, its characteristics and its classification. So, and under that, we looked at the division Coelophyta and its life cycle. So, in this video, we're going to continue with the classification of the Pteridophyta. So, like I've mentioned before, the phylum Pteridophyta is divided into four main divisions. We have division Coelophyta, Lycophyta, Equisetophita, and Pterophyta. So we have looked at the division Coelophyta, its features and its life cycle in the previous video. In this video, we're going to continue with the division Lycophyta. So again, the phylum Pteridophyta is divided into four divisions. We have Coelophyta, Lycophyta, Equisetophita, and Pterophyta. So like I said, we're going to continue with the division Lycophyta in this video. So first and foremost, the plants that belongs to this division Lycophyta are known as lycophytes. Lycophytes. Lycophytes are plants that belongs to the division Lycophyta. Lycophytes are examples of what? Lycophyta. So examples of lycophytes are Lycopodium, Selagilena, and Isocete. These are the three basic examples of the lycophytes: Lycopodium, Selagilena, and what? Isocete. Lycopodium is also called club moss. It's also known as club moss. Selagilena is also known as spike moss, while the Isocete is also known as what? The quillwort. So these are the various examples, the three major examples of the lycophytes. So what are the features of these lycophytes? Number one feature you should take note of is that they have differentiated body. What that means is that they have root, they have stem, and they have leaves. Their body is differentiated into root, stem, and leaves. In Coelophytes, remember, they have stem but no leaves. They have stem but they have no leaves. In Lycophytes, their body is well differentiated into root, stem, and leaves. Then secondly, they are vascular plants, right? That means they have vascular tissues, which are the xylem and the phloem. Then also, very importantly, they have protostele and sometimes siphenostele. So, a stele is simply the arrangement of the vascular tissue in the stem and root of a plant. A stele is the arrangement of the vascular tissue, is the arrangement of the vascular tissues in the stem and root of the plant. So the vascular tissues, they are basically xylem and phloem, right? So how this xylem and phloem is arranged in the stem and root is what a stele is all about. And we have two types of stele. We have the protostele and the siphenostele. So the protostele, which is the first example of stele, is composed of a solid core xylem in the center and the phloem surrounds it. So what you're seeing here is a typical example of a protostele. You have a solid core xylem at the center. So this pinkish part is the xylem and it is surrounded by phloem. So this bluish part is what? The phloem. So the protostele is a form of stele that consists of a solid core xylem in the center. So you can see this solid core xylem in the center and the phloem surrounds it, and the phloem surrounds it. So what you still have here is a solid core xylem in the center and the phloem what surrounds it. What you have here also is a solid core xylem in the center and the phloem does what surrounds it. So these are examples of, this is a stele and these are the types of various types of stele that we have. This is the haplostele, actinostele, and plectostele. Then the siphenostele or siphonostele is a type of stele that consists of a pit-filled center, which is usually hollow. It consists of a pit-filled center or a hollow center surrounded by a xylem and a phloem. So what you're seeing here is an example of a siphonostele. You can see this pit filled center here. There is nothing here. So this is the hollow center, which is the pit filled center, surrounded by xylem and phloem. So this is the xylem and the phloem surrounding it. So this is the pit filled center, which is hollow. This is also the pit filled center, which is what? Hollow. And it has xylem and phloem surrounding it. So what we're trying to say here is that the arrangement of the vascular tissues in lycophytes can exhibit the form of a protostele or siphonostele. Very important. So learning about stele is what we'll look at basically in second semester. So another feature of the lycophytes is that the sporophylls aggregate to form strobili. The sporophylls aggregate to form strobili. Sporophylls are leaves that bears sporangia. They are the leaves that bears sporangia. So some of them can cluster together, they can group themselves together to form what is called a strobili. So this thing that you see here, this is a strobilus, singular. Plural is strobili. So this is an aggregation of sporophylls. Remember, sporophylls are leaves that bears what? Sporangia. So when they aggregate together, they form the strobilus, right? Then also, very importantly, lycophytes may be homosporous or heterosporous. So homo means one. So when we say they are homosporous, it simply means that the spores are of the same form. They are of the same shape and form. So heterosporous means different, right? That means the spores are of different shapes and what and form. So examples of a homosporous lycophyte is Lycopodium. Examples of a heterosporous lycophyte is Selaginella, also known as spike moss, and Isosceles, which is also known as the quillwort. So this is very important. Example of the homosporous lycophyte is Lycopodium. Examples of the heterosporous lycophyte is Selaginella and what? Isosceles. So another important feature that you should know is that the gametophyte depends on the fungus for food. The gametophyte plant, which is the generation responsible for production of gametes, depends on fungus for food. So this is all you need to know about the division Lycophyta. So to take us further, let's dash to some questions. Let's look at some questions. Which of the following is a heterosporous pteridophyte? Which of the following is a heterosporous pteridophyte? So we have looked at heterosporous pteridophytes under the division Lycophytes, under the division Lycophyta. So Selaginella is the right answer. Selaginella and Isosceles are examples of what? Are examples of heterosporous pteridophytes. What that means is that they have different spores. They have spores of different shapes and what size. So they produce heterosporous spores. Then let's look at this second question. In the life cycle of pteridophytes, meiosis occurs in in the life cycle of pteridophytes, meiosis occurs in, is it in the spores? No. Is it in gametophytes generation? No. It occurs in the sporangia. So let's dash back to when we looked at the life cycle of coelentophytes. So this is the sporophyte plant. It contains the sporangium, right? Inside the sporangium, you have the spore mother cells. These spore mother cells, they are inside this sporangium. So what you are seeing here, all these spores, they are referred to as the spore mother cells, right? So when meiosis occurs in these spore mother cells, each of them will produce 4 meiospores. They produce 4 meiospores. And when this sporangium ruptures, it ruptures to release the meiospores. then germinates to form the gametophyte plant, right? So meiosis occurs in this sporangium. Very important. So back to the question, in the life cycle of pteridophytes, meiosis occurs in the what? In the sporangia. Which of the following is considered the most primitive of pteridophytes? Which of them is considered to be the most primitive group of pteridophytes? So from the division Pteridophyta, we have 4 divisions. We have Coelophyta, Coelophyta. We have Lycophyta. We have Equisetophita, and we have Pterophyta. So the most primitive group of the phylum Pteridophyta is actually the Coelophyta. So Lycophyta, no. Coelophyta, yes. So the most primitive group of the phylum Pteridophyta is what? Coelophyta, which is also referred to as the Coelophyta. The presence of well-developed vascular tissue in pteridophytes is an adaptation for. So the presence of well-developed vascular tissue in pteridophytes is an adaptation for terrestrial life. That is what gives them the ability to live on land, to survive on land. Which of the following is not a subdivision of Pteridophyta? Coelopsida is a division, Lycopsida is a division, Pteropsida is a division. Bryopsida is not a division. So our answer therefore is Bryopsida. Bryopsida is a bryophyte. It belongs to the phylum Bryophyta. Which structure in pteridophytes contains spore-producing sporangia? Is it the leaf? Is it the stem? Is it the root? Is it the sporophyll? The correct answer is what? Sporophyll. The sporophylls are leaves that contains sporangia, and we looked at that in the features of lycophytes. Sporophylls are leaves that bears what? Sporangia. So that is very important. So let's look at another question. The dominant phase in the life cycle of pteridophytes is the dominant phase in the life cycle of pteridophytes. So we've looked at the life cycle of pteridophytes, and when we are looking at the features, I mentioned that the dominant phase is what? The sporophyte generation, and it is diploid in nature. In Bryophyta, the dominant phase is the gametophyte. So note the difference between the gametophyte and sporophyte generation in both pteridophytes and bryophytes. Then the last question we have here is pteridophytes reproduce through seeds? No, because they are seedless plants. Pteridophytes do not produce seeds, they are seedless plants. They reproduce by spores. So this is our answer. They reproduce by what? Spores. By fruits? No, they are seedless and so they cannot produce fruits. Cones? No, they are seedless and so their seeds cannot be found inside the cone. So our current answer is that they reproduce through spores. So having known all that, the next thing we're going to look at is the division Equisetophita, and we'll continue with this in our next video.